Welcome everybody to the June meeting of Council. I'd like to open the meeting with a prayer. Almighty God, be with us as we work for the people of the Shire of Moorabool. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire as true stewards of your creation. May be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us. Help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen. I'd now like to read out the Acknowledgement of Country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we are meeting. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. In accordance with Moorabool Council's meeting procedure, local law, the meeting will be recorded. The following organisations also been granted permission to make an audio recording: the Moorabool News and the Star Weekly. So just to advise people of that. As all councillors are present or online, we have a full attendance of councillors and no apologies. Item 6, confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of the 4th of May 2022 and the special meeting of Council Wednesday the 11th of May 2022. Could somebody please move that they be received? Councillor Berry, Councillor Minari. Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosure of conflict of interest on tonight's meeting, councillors? Okay, thank you. Item 8, public question time, which is the aim of this is on the agenda to allow the public to ask general questions at council meetings requiring routine responses. We have 5 questions, council, so I'll hand over to Mr. CEO just to lead us through that, please, and then hand over to Mr. Bazudenhout. Yes, question time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll read a question. It's from Susie Prezard. When I first came to Bochasmaas in 2017, what really appealed to me was the rolling hills, the natural landscape, and the small town atmosphere. In recent years, we've seen a lot of residential developments taking place. These are small blocks, land as little as 300 square metres, where houses are being built, compromising the hill views and country feel that attracts residents to the town. We are gradually losing our small town appeal, and the natural landscape and population growth is being felt, for example, at childcare centres with lengthy wait lists for children to be enrolled. How is the council planning all these developments in proportion to our limited available community infrastructure, and how do we end up like all other suburbs? And how do we not end up like all other suburbs like Troganina and Tarnit with congested developments? In response, Mr. Mayor, Council recognises the appeal of small town charm and country, lifestyle after Shire. This is also reflected in the Community Vision 2030, where these key themes are repeated. For example, maintaining our rural charm, connected communities, well-planned neighbourhoods, embracing sustainability and strong local economy. However, Bochasmaas has strong links to Melbourne and regional centres and is attracting residential growth. Furthermore, state planning policies seek to direct greater share of growth to regional Victoria. Plan Melbourne also identifies Bochasmaas as an area of potential growth. The Central Highlands Regional Growth Plan of 2014 also identifies Bochasmaas as a regional growth centre, second to Ballarat, with projected to accommodate population growth in the region over the next 30 years. In order to plan for growth, Council has completed a number of strategic documents to guide the expected population growth in a manner that acknowledges the attractive aspects of Bochasmaas. Some of these include the Urban Growth Framework, the Housing Strategy, and the Community Infrastructure Framework. Other projects currently underway include the Town Centre Structure Plan, the Retail Strategy, and also Open Space Strategy. All of these play an important role in guiding new development and development to create livable communities and sustainable outcomes. These also inform documents like the Precinct Structure Plans, which are developed for the identified growth areas, and these Precinct Structure Plans identify and pre-plan infrastructure and facilities like shopping centres, schools, parks, walking tracks, road links, etc. This is to ensure that the level and location of infrastructure provided is appropriate for the increased population predicted growth. All developers in these areas are required to provide and/or financially contribute towards these infrastructure, roads, drainage, parks, etc. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bazun. Any questions on that particular matter, councillors? Okay, thank you. I'm assuming that, as usual, the response will be forwarded through to Ms. Prasad. Yes. Yeah, thank you. We have a second question. It was Mr. Digby Thackeray. Mr. Thackeray, I know, is in the gallery there today. I'm assuming Mr. would like to come through and actually ask his question. Yes, if you just come forward, Mr. Thackeray, and just make sure that green light is on there so that just ask the question. We have a written question come in the business paper, so if you wish to read that out, and please sit down so that.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably the easiest thing is I was under the impression I'd been disallowed to speak tonight, other than the small part of the question. So
could I just sort of,
is
basically what is
out so I don't have to read.
No, so this what we've received this in our business paper, the question that you asked, and I just thought you may wish to ask that question directly to council, so rather than have it read out by Mr. Bezuidenhout, please.
Okay, well I can do that for a start if you like. I created Sunnystone School Camp in 1985. It is still operating, however, I have sold it to Mr. and Mrs. Hope. The access to the camp is now under threat since, following the sale, the access is across an adjoining block that I still own. I am 82 years old and will soon have to sell that block, which also has upon it a house that I currently rent to Mr. and Mrs. Hope. I have been trying to subdivide my block to put in a new paved public road that will ensure and improve access to Sunnystones. This is complicated, and I wish to address council to assist in progressing the application that has been made to hopefully ensure the future viability of Sunnystones.
Thank you, Mr. Thackeray. Mr. Bezuidenhout, do you wish to respond to that? I know there's a request there from Mr. Thackeray to perhaps have some future meeting with council. Is that really what I'm hearing here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, the response is that the public question is noted and a formal response will be provided to Mr. Thackeray.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would it be all right if I just handed out some information to the councillors?
No, that's fine. I think that's okay. Yes.
Right, thank you. Any
questions, councillors, of Mr. Thackeray? Obviously, there will be, as Mr. Bezuidenhout noted, there will be a formal response to the questions and what have you. So please, yes, Councillor. Sorry, if you want to hand them out, please do so.
Okay, I was waiting for Councillor Dudds to get a hand up.
Sorry, no, it wasn't for you. Through the Mayor, is it possible that our planning department could meet with Mr. Thackeray?
Mr. Bezuidenhout, I think there has been some discussion already, but I'll let you to respond to that, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have met with Mr. Thackeray. We're more than happy to continue the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Thackeray, councillors? Sorry, Councillor Edwards.
Just to you, Mr. Mayor. Just the question, I'm assuming that there is an application already with council to do this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? And obviously, as noted in Mr. Bezuidenhout's response, that the formal response will be provided for the landowner and followed up as councillors require. So thank you very much. Thank you for any further questions. Okay, thank you, Mr. Thackeray. Thank you very much for that. And obviously, it'll be council officers will get back, and obviously councillors will be informed of how this is progressing. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Tatch, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Could we forward a copy to Councillor Ward, because obviously it would have been difficult to hand him one.
True. No, good. Thank you, but that'll be forwarded to Councillor Ward, perhaps even electronically, or if not, he'll certainly get a response to it. Thank you. The next question is from Kate Whittingslow. This is regarding growth in Bacchus Marsh, and I'll hand over to Ms. Bassoon, please. Caroline, please.
Thank you. So the question relates to Council's procurement policy and most particularly sustainable procurement practices. So the question, are these best practice procurement principles incorporated into a long-term strategy for the Shire? And are there any initiatives that have come from selecting socially responsible suppliers? What are some initiatives which Council do directly regarding corporate social responsibility, which may not be well publicised? The response, Moorabool Shire Council acknowledges the emerging importance of sustainable procurement. The 3 strategic objectives articulated in the Council plan reflect Council's commitment to achieving value for Council, the local community and the environment. More specifically, Council's recently adopted procurement policy highlights officers' responsibilities to ensure that procurement practices achieve value across the entire life cycle of goods, services and works. The policy highlights sustainable procurement as a key principle. Examples of sustainable procurement practices include, for example, supporting local procurement by encouraging local businesses to bid for council work and providing a 5% price preferencing to local businesses. A second example, minimizing greenhouse gas emissions generated through transport activities by supporting local procurement. And third example, better energy efficiency by investing in the procurement of high-efficiency LED lighting across its street lighting network and a significant investment in the procurement of rooftop solar panels across Council's major building. Moorabool Shire will continue to mature, improve and refine its policies, practices and procedures.
Thank you for that. And again, that response will be forwarded through to Ms. Whittingslow. Thank you. Next, any questions of councillors of that particular matter? Okay, thank you. Moving on, next question is Mr. John Kowalski. This relates to some issues at Mill Park. So, Mr. Jeffrey, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So question 1 is, as per the road safety audit for Mill Park, will Council please move the give way sign outwards to connect to the edge line of the bridge? The response is, Council will be relocating the give way markings to accord with Australian standards as part of the civil works contract that is currently in place. Question 2. As per the road safety audit for Mill Park, will Council please construct a pedestrian refuge island at the new path crossing being constructed? And the response is, a pedestrian refuge has been included in the civil works contract to be implemented as part of that work.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. And again, excuse me, and again, as with the other presenters who've sent in written questions, those responses will go back, and from what you've just said, this was sort of basically part of that the civil works anyway, and we're going to be attended to, so thank you very much. That ends public question time, councillors. The next item on the business is item 9.1, a petition requesting the name of the Elaine Recreation Reserve to be known as the Ron Reid Recreation Reserve. There's a recommendation there, councillors, at the bottom of page 8. Somebody wish to move that, please? Councillor Edwards?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder? Councillor Dudzik? Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Next item is item 9.2, a petition Marindi Way Darley. And again, there is a recommendation there, councillors. Someone prepared to move that? Move Councillor Dudzik. Seconded Councillor Berry. Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Item 10, presentations and deputations, of which there are none. Moving on to 11.1, Community Grants Report, March 2022. There's a recommendation at the bottom of page 11 there, councillors. Move Councillor Ward. Is there a seconder? Councillor Minari. Is there any dissent? David's got a question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Edwards. Yeah, sorry.
I did have a couple of questions, Mr Mayor, if I may. The first question's in relation to the policy. I note that we're moving money from one stream into another. Does our policy allow for that, our current community grants policy?
Mr CEO, please.
Through the chair. As part of this process, we have identified that the policy is actually quite silent on that, and we are going to review the policy to ensure that it's more clear, but it's actually currently silent on the movement of funds between, so we want to get more specific with the policy.
I have another question, if I may, Mr Mayor, just in relation to the sustainability funding, which talks in the policy about putting solar panels on roof, those sorts of things. The council, and it also talks about training in environmental needs. The council office is satisfied that those ones meet the current guidelines for the sustainability grants.
Mr CEO?
I will have to pass that one to the acting manager, Chris Gardner, on that particular one.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So there's an assessment panel made up of 9 representatives across council, independent reps officers who undertake the assessment, and they did deem all of the environmental grants to meet the satisfactory criteria to be put up as funded applications.
Councillor Edwards, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I do have one more, if I may, Mr Mayor. So, is council officers aware of any potential impacts if this was to be delayed at all on some of the obviously community groups are waiting for the grants to be allocated, and there will be some projects that need to start. Would a month's delay on this create any problems for some of the community groups?
Mr Gardner, please.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I would have to take that on notice. I'm not. There's a number of grants obviously looking to be funded, so I'm not across the exact detail of all of those and what the implications would be. I would have to come back to you on that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. Councillor Tatchell, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. The land care groups that have got these grants, I suppose my question is, are they under the auspice of DWELB or state government?
Mr CEO, please.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll have to refer that to the acting manager. I'm not 100% sure myself as to how they're auspiced.
Mr Gardner, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. I will have to take that question on notice. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other questions, councillors? Okay. The motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any dissent? Councillor Tatchell. That being the case, Councillor Ward, do you wish to speak to this motion, please, as the mover?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I move this motion because I'm comfortable that the 16 applications received that have been recommended for $33,000, just over $33,000 in grants out of the amount available of $157,000 will be of benefit to the Mirrabul Shire Council community. The 16 grant applications received a nice mix of arts and culture, community strengthening, community events, community development and sustainability and environmental engagement. We've been through a thorough assessment process where these grants were reviewed at a council briefing and measured against the criteria, and they were also, the officer's recommendations were considered as part of that, and they were also measured against what is very stringent criteria. So I'm more than comfortable in moving that these grants be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Manari, as a second, do you wish to speak to the motion, please?
I'll just add that I mirror Councillor Ward's words, and obviously it's been heavily scrutinised in going through this process, and I'm comfortable with the application.
Thank you, Councillor Manari. Councillor Tatchell, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. This isn't about whether they're worthy or not worthy, or it's purely about a process that I'm just not sure. We had 2 questions asked about whether they qualify, and we've had 2 questions put on notice, so we don't actually know the answer to that. We have had issues in the past where we've had a crossover of grants that are being given to state government departments or departments that control these organisations. There's nothing against the organisation, but my understanding is that our process was that the ratepayers were putting grants towards local projects that are under the auspice of council. And we've had a number of discussions over the years about this, and so it's probably, if I knew those answers, I wouldn't be objecting to this, but I certainly have some concerns with this continual crossover where the ratepayers are paying to grant projects that really are under state government control, or the people that are under their controls. So whilst it, you know, if I had a affirmative answer that the process was fine and it was within the boundary lines that we play in, I'd probably be quite happy to have it go through. So it's nothing against the actual projects, it's just that I'm just not totally convinced that we've followed the right process here. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Any other speaker? Councillor Dudzik, please.
It's more, it's more a question. Would it be possible if the sustainability and environment grants could actually be deferred to the next meeting but the rest go through? Would that be a consideration for the mover and the seconder? Because that's where the questions are being asked. Can we deal with those ones next month and approve the others this month?
I think the question is probably directed to the organisation CEO rather than the mover and the seconder, with great respect.
Yes, I think first things, I've just got the answer on one of the questions, is the Landcare Group are incorporated, so that's one of the points. But look, to be honest with you, I think if you're going to defer, you would defer the whole report, and then we would bring it back as a whole report.
So I think the question from Councillor Dudley is, could this be split?
And that's what my response was. I think if you were going to defer it, you would defer it all, the whole report.
No, so I suppose, is there any governance reason why it could not be split? That's just...
Not that I'm aware of as to why you wouldn't do it, by our process.
Yeah, no, that's fine, thank you. Any other question? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't want to overly complicate this, but we also, when you look at the baskets of money that are handed out for grants, there was some changes in how the amount of money that was available and the amount of money that was given. And by our own admission, we don't have a policy in place to transfer those funds. And I have some concerns about that, because if we need to change the policy by all means, but if the policy was contestable, which it could be for people that didn't get the grant, and it was seen that we weren't showing, following process, and as you know, Mr Mayor, I'm probably not the most processed person in the world, but on this particular one, when it comes to day rate me, I think you've just got to be very careful that, that all the ducks line up and everything's where it should be. So is that the case, that we've transferred money from one to another, which isn't an amount we would normally do?
Yeah, I suppose I need to be clear. First of all, we've gone through this many times, but the report wouldn't be in breach of the policy. What I've said is the policy is silent on it, and what we need to do is go back and be a bit more prescriptive in the policy, so that there is no confusion, but it's actually silent on it, and that's the issue. So it's not a grounds for challenge, but from a pure probity point of view and to provide added clarity, our feeling is that we would go back and bring it back to council with potential changes if council is amenable to accept those changes.
Okay, thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Dudzik.
Can I move to defer this? Because I would like those questions answered before we vote on it, if anyone is interested in seconding it.
The primary motion hasn't been put yet, so if you wish to have it deferred, and the council consider a deferral, which is a procedural motion.
I foreshadow an alternative motion if this doesn't go through, that this item be deferred to the next meeting.
Okay, is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor.
I think we need to go through the first bit first.
Well, that's true. No, that's true. Well, it's the benefit having ex-mayors in the gallery in attendance as well. Thank you. Yeah, is there any further speakers for or against excuse me, the Item 11.1. Councillor Berry.
I just have a question. If we defer this, is this going to put these groups, are you aware how urgent these funds are to these groups? Does anybody know an answer to that?
I think that was a question raised by one other councillor, and I think it was sort of a bit, have to get back to us on that, I think. That was the advice, I think, what we received.
No, the question was if we did defer this, would it be a detriment to the groups that have got getting awarded these funds?
Mr. Sear.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think Chris has answered that question. I think we're a little bit unsure on the urgency for the receipt of these grants. So at this moment in time, we just wouldn't be in a position to answer that question.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I suppose when an item like this comes in and we don't have a conciliatory bracket of affirmation on whether, or if we don't have enough process here to actually deal with the matter there and then, the fact still remains that it was approved, and regardless if we're missing parts of the process, it's really on us. And what's on the table, despite the fact that we don't have all of those items or ability to process, it shouldn't be at the detriment of the people who have been awarded the grant. So what I'm saying is we're dealing with what we have today.
True.
And the fact that we don't have a process to deal with those problems, I would consider withdrawing my objection on that basis, because we don't have enough.
Well, I think at the moment we're probably getting into debate rather than a question.
I just didn't want to complicate it, Mr. Mayor,
okay.
with the second. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I could speak for the original motion, if that's okay.
Yes.
So, councillors, I've taken on board the points that the CEO's made that the policy is silent. I personally think that there is some grey area in there, and some of the interpretations, and noting that I missed the briefing, so that's on me, unfortunately. So taking on both those points that Mr. CEO did, but what I would ask, what I would think we would do from this is we would have a review at a later date, because community grants is always, councillors, is always one of those areas where everybody wants it. Then we get a heap of applications one year, we don't get many this year, and so I would like clarity that moving forward, and particularly around, I think, some of the criteria, councillors. However, this has gone out to the community, has been dealt with, and I think that it's probably better that in this instance we allow it to go through and we look at those criteria and tighten some of that criteria up moving forward. So with that, councillors, I'll support the original recommendation.
Councillor, any other speakers for or against? I would seek leave of council to speak against this, if I may. My rationale is that maybe these projects should exceed the amount of monies we've allocated to that particular. It may be good projects. That is not at issue, and that is not in dispute, although there has been issues raised, questions asked. I think it's a matter of, we have a policy, we follow the policy. If you don't follow a policy, you're like a ship without a rudder. You just drift. How do we then defend a position if we say, it has been said, the policy is silent? But policy by their very nature are written in a positive sense, what you shall do, what you can do. And I think it's important we do that, because if we go down a path of saying, well, we have this money there, we'll just shuffle it around. Where's the guidance that says, yeah, you can shuffle this money around? That's my particular point. It's not the projects. And then it gets like, it's fundamentally saying, well, the end justifies the means. When we get to this point, oh, well, these are good projects, we'll just take the money out of this one. Then you can't defend your position then if you do that. If you keep moving around, it's poor governance to sort of just swap money around without the absence of policy. If you have the policy that says council can do that, that's fine. But we don't. So someone said, oh, we'll just take the money out of this. But it's not the dollars, it's the principle that I find object to in this particular matter. And I think it's just, you know, there's people who, others put money in for applications. They were the policies, they are the guidelines, they adhere to it. Now, if they knew, oh, well, council will just fluff it around, they're moving around to suit themselves, that's not good policy. Policy is something you stand behind. If people believe that the money should be allocated, get the policy right, then do it, not the other way around. That's putting the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, whichever way you want to go. So I'm not knocking the projects, they're very good, but on principle, I don't think you can sort of just move things around to suit the occasion, because then you can't defend your position when you go forward. So thank you very much, councillors. Councillor Ward, you have the closing debate, please. Councillor Ward.
Sorry about that, Mr Mayor. I note your comments, Mr Mayor, and I suppose I respectfully disagree with them. We had a very lengthy discussion in our briefing on the 11th of May, where we measured all these projects against the applicable criteria. I do point out that, and I endorse the CEO's comments, that whilst the current policy is silent on this matter, there was lengthy debate that day, and what we did support in principle was that as the amounts requested were well within and well below the amount budgeted in community grants, that all projects were worthy of consideration. And, and subsequently, we felt they were worthy of approval. So we certainly are not breaching any policy. I certainly support the policy should be clarified moving forward, but I am very much in favour of supporting these applicants and the grants that have been discussed and nominated for approval. And we had our opportunity on the 11th of May to assess those projects at the briefing, and we did so, and hence the notice of motion tonight to approve those projects that have been recommended for approval. So I stand by my earlier notice of motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Tatt, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. My only concern is that we noted that at a briefing, we've made a decision at a briefing which is totally...
No, there was no decisions made, and there wasn't all supporting for of it either.
Yeah. I just note that in the debate, that's how it was portrayed.
Indeed.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, I'll put that. All those in favour? The motion is lost. Now, Councillor Dudzik, you did flag something earlier.
It's not working.
There's another one. There's one not coming off the bench.
I move that this item be in the next council agenda for consideration after we've had the opportunity for questions to be asked and answered.
Heard the motion of Councillor Dudzik. Is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Tatchell. Is there any dissent? Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Next item of business is item 11.2, Public Art and Collections Policy. There is a recommendation on page 17, councillors. So somebody wish to move that, please? Move Councillor Dudzik, a seconder. Councillor Berry. Is there any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Next item of business is item 12.1, March 22 Quarterly Financial Report. There is a recommendation on page 22. Are there any questions, council? Somebody wish to move that recommendation, please? Move Councillor Tatchell, seconded Councillor Dudzik. Sorry, Councillor Evans, yes.
Just in relation to the quarterly, sorry, is hopefully computer's turned off on me. With the quarterly financial report, probably a question for Mr CEO in relation to...
The question, please.
There's $1.8 million in deficit according to cash, and it says it's mainly due to storms. Is it in the past we've got money for storm recovery? Will that be coming back and put us back into neutral figures?
Mr CEO, please.
Through the chair, that's exactly the case. It's one of those ones that's crossing calendar years. So one part of it is that we had a much bigger surplus last year, which was got to do with funds we received in advance, and then also there's going to be funds for floods and damage that was done this year that we will receive the money for. But from a timing point of view, it all gets booked into this year.
Answer your question, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thank you. Councillors, we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any questions or I'll put that if no dissent. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Next item of business, item 12.2, brand strategy project update, corporate logo refresh. There's a recommendation there on page 26. Any questions or somebody wish to move that, please? Councillor Dudzik as a seconder. Councillor Minari, any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Next item is item 13.1, development of the waste and resource recovery strategy. Again, there's a recommendation on page 29. Council, any questions or somebody wish to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I'll move with the question if I may.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Berry, please.
Yeah,
yes.
just the move with the question is in relation to, we had 50 detailed submissions. That seems a lot for a council policy. Is that a good thing?
Mr Jeffrey?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd say it was reflective of the comprehensive engagement process that the team went through to develop the strategy, and I'd note that most of those submissions we received were in support of the strategy.
Thanks, Mr Jeffries.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? We have a mover and a second of that. Is there any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Next item of business, item 13.2, draft asset management strategy and asset management plans. There's a recommendation on the bottom of page 36. Councillors, any questions or somebody wish to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Dudzik, seconded Councillor Edwards. Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Item 13.3, Cathcart Street Special Rates and Charges Scheme. Again, there is a recommendation on page 41. If there's any questions or somebody wish to move that, please. Councillor Tatchell, moving it. Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Dudzik. Any dissent? I'll put that. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 14, other reports, nil. Item 15, notices of motion, again nil. Item 16, notices of rescission, again they're nil. Moving on to item 17, the Mayor's report, which I believe has been circulated to all councillors on the meetings I've been having and attending over the last little while. So somebody wish to move that receive, please. Councillor Berry, second to Councillor Edwards. I'll put any dissent. I'll put the ayes in favour. It's carried. Thank you. Council reports. I'll start on my left and go around if that's okay. I'll start with Councillor Minari, please.
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Minari. Councillor Tatchell.
If I may, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to note the work that's been done at the Balan Youth Centre, or youth space, and it probably went unnoticed by a lot of people, not the young people obviously, but I did call in there and I'd just like to congratulate the team for putting that together so quickly anyway, and also the support of the Mechanics Hall for facilitating it, and just the fact that there's actually young people that are turning up, which is exactly what it's designed to do. So I don't know if the staff got a pat on the back for the work that went into that. That's all. It's had an instant result. So well done to the team.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Ward, do you have any councillor reports, please?
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Berry, any councillor reports, please?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mr Mayor. On Tuesday at 8 o'clock, the 10th of May, I attended the Neighbours Place annual general meeting. This group's doing amazing work in our community, distributing food to needy residents and in particular issuing non-interest loans to those in the community who are financially struggling. And I think over the years I found out at this annual general meeting too that they've actually purchased a house, this group, so they've worked so hard in fundraising and certain things, and they've just recently paid it off. So that's an enormous effort for that neighbourhood house group. And those same people have worked in this group for years, so excellent work to that group and that it's continuing. On Saturday the 14th of May at 1 o'clock with the Mayor, Councillor Tom Sullivan attended the Community Leadership Program, which we participated in their little activity, which was a fun afternoon, and learnt a little bit more about leadership myself, and I think maybe Mr Mayor might have too. It was quite fun, wasn't it? So that was run by council, which I thought is a great leadership program for the people in the community to be able to attend. At 10:30 on Tuesday, the 17th of May, attended the morning tea at Bacchus Marsh Library, celebrating Ida Hobbit Day. Met the lovely staff of council there and the library staff, and I was only a guest, so I was very thoroughly spoiled. Got to eat lots of the donuts and cakes. They had a little speech, but most of all, I was so impressed by the community utilising our library there. There were 42, I shouldn't say mothers, parents. It was fathers and mothers with their children in a book library session. So 42, I was just overwhelmed by the amount of people attending that early morning session with their babies. And on Tuesday, the 31st of May, 10:30, attended the funding announcement by Minister Martin McCullough for the further works at the 1,000 Steps Summit, opening of the steps, also the cutting of the ribbon, and we got to climb, thank goodness, only half of the steps up to the top. That was quite an effort, and back down it was quite a cold morning, but you soon warmed up. Had a bit of a rest on the way, so that's my report. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. My calves are still feeling it, actually. So, thank you. Councillor Dudzik, any councillor reports, please?
On the 27th of May, I attended the Bacchus Marsh flag raising ceremony for Reconciliation Week with Uncle Ringo. And there was a fabulous presentation by students from Bacchus Marsh Primary School. They did a beautiful painting for reconciliation and presented it to Uncle Ringo, which was really quite lovely, and it turned out that some of the kids there at the primary school were actually related to him. So it was like a family reunion. But yeah, no, it was very well done, and congrats to all the staff that helped organise it. I also attended the funding announcement at the 1,000 plus steps in Bacchus Marsh yesterday, and it's great to see that moving ahead. I attended the Bacchus Marsh Racecourse Advisory Committee on the 26th of May. And it's good to see things starting to progress on that committee, a little bit different to earlier committees. And well done to the council staff, because it's not an easy committee. On the 26th of May, I attended, as the council representative, a meeting of the Bacchus Marsh Public Hall. Carol Young, who is the bookings officer, has resigned due to ill health, and I would ask that council actually write a letter thanking her for her service to council as the bookings officer and past secretary. And I'm hoping that council can assist the hall committee as much as they possibly can, because it's a rather difficult time for this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Councillor Edwards, any councillor?
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Somebody move that the council reports be received, please. Councillor Minari, seconded Councillor Edwards. No dissent. I'll put that all those in favour. It is carried. Item 19 is urgent business, and again I'll start on my left and start with Councillor Minari. Any urgent business, councillors? And noting council's local law, just what it is, and then it's got to be accepted first. So if there is any, please just advise.
No urgent business, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Minari. Councillor Tatchell, any urgent business, please?
A very small thing, if I may, Mr Mayor, and see if it'll stand up to urgent business, is in Belen, the flag raising ceremony was cancelled due to COVID. I'm just wondering if we could change our processes so that should the smoking ceremony not be available for whatever reason, that either the Mayor or a councillor could at least acknowledge that process and still go ahead with putting the flag up from a government point of view.
I guess that's sort of more of a question you sort of have there?
Yeah, just sort of a question is it something we can fix so that we don't
I think we don't need to formalise it. The CEO has indicated that's something we can address. I think it says unfortunate.
So it's not a big thing, so I don't think we need motion.
No, that's what I was just going to... Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
No other urgent business? Councillor Ward, any urgent business, please?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Berry, any urgent business?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mr Mayor. There is a concern, I have a motion, but basically it's about a concern of mail deliveries in particularly, and I know of the Bacchus Marsh area, that they're often stamped a fortnight prior. They're taking basically a fortnight to arrive to people's homes. This is, I've been approached on several occasions, but it's been a single one-off thing until this week. There's been a couple of issues, so I've...
Is this something that perhaps fits the criteria of urgent business and not be... has to be sort of something that can't wait till then, perhaps get an, councillor report or something?
Well, I'm not sure, Mr Mayor. I was thinking of maybe a letter to Australia Post, because I think it's become urgent now, because some of these letters are arriving well after some of the medical appointments are to be confirmed. So with the fortnight, they're coming out from doctors in the city, and it's taking a fortnight for these forms to reach families, and then they're missing appointments. You
said you had a sort of a motion that you had in mind there, or not?
Yes, I did send. You should have got it. It was late this afternoon in everyone's email.
Okay. Excuse me. So you're asking that a letter be forwarded to Australia Post, something of that, just to see whether councillors are prepared to accept it as urgent business. That's all. Just to encapsulate.
Yes, that's.
Councillor Tatchell.
Maybe, Mr Mayor, we could do that one informally as well, on the basis that we've just gone to an election, and I think it's a very valid point that people that had to vote from home may not have got their voting.
Mr CEO, what your response might be?
Through the chair, I'm happy to draft a letter. I've received a copy of the motion, so I'm happy to draft a letter on the basis of what that contents.
Is that okay, Councillor Berry?
That's sure. Did you want me to read the motion or not? No?
Well, I can just...
You've got... Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I suppose probably be... I think it's quite clear the intent you've made is to the concern that people are getting their mail late after the post dated, and I think the CEO has indicated that he would sort of follow that through with a letter, and that might be the better way to deal with it. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you, Mr
Any
Mayor.
other urgent
That's
business?
Fine. No, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Dudzik, any urgent business?
No urgent business, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Councillor Edwards, any urgent business, please?
It's not really a motion, it's probably a question.
Okay.
And it's urgent for the individual because they keep getting flooded. So about 3 months ago, there was a motion of council to investigate the flooding issues on Fiskin Street and Parwin Road. I was just wondering if we could get an update on where that's at.
So basically this is a question from an earlier motion of council
Yes,
to see whether it's been acted upon.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr Jeffrey, you able to respond to that, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm going to have to take that on notice and come back through to Councillor Edwards, if that's okay.
You okay with that, Councillor Edwards? Yes. Okay, thank you. Moving along, item 12, closed session of council to the public, nil. And at this particular juncture, councillors, I would close the meeting. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, officers, for your involvement and your fine reports. And I wish everyone a good evening. And we'll close the meeting and we'll until our July meeting. So thank you very much.